The joke slipped out of his mouth on the worst night of his life, the kind of tired, broken humor that comes from carrying too much for too long. He never imagined that by the next morning, the most powerful woman in the city would be standing at his door, turning that careless sentence into a moment that would change everything. Before the story pulls you deeper, take a second right now. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unexpected miracles, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support keeps stories like this alive. Ethan Carter was the kind of man people barely noticed. A single father in his mid-30s, he moved through life quietly, shoulders always slightly hunched, as if apologizing for taking up space. His days began before sunrise and ended long after dark, shaped entirely around his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Since his wife passed away 3 years earlier, Ethan had learned to live on exhaustion and love alone. He worked as a night shift facilities supervisor at a towering glass corporate headquarters downtown, a job that paid just enough to keep the lights on and Lily fed, but never enough to feel safe. Every paycheck felt like a thin bridge stretched over disaster, and Ethan crossed it again and again, praying it would not collapse. That night the building was unusually quiet. Rain streaked down the windows like the city itself was crying, and Ethan's body ached from double shifts and sleepless nights. Lily was at home with a neighbor, sick with a mild fever, and guilt sat heavy in his chest for not being there. As he finished his rounds, he noticed someone sitting alone in the executive lounge long after midnight. It was Claire Whitmore, the CEO of the company, a woman whose name carried weight in boardrooms and headlines alike. She was known as brilliant, untouchable, and intimidating. Yet there she was, still in her office clothes, staring at nothing, looking smaller than her reputation. Ethan had met her a handful of times in passing, exchanging polite nods, nothing more. That night, though, something felt different. The air carried a heaviness that mirrored his own. He did his job, cleaned quietly, and prepared to leave. But she spoke first, asking him a simple question about whether the building ever felt lonely at night. It surprised him, and without thinking, he answered honestly, admitting that nights were when loneliness echoed the loudest. Somehow the conversation drifted, not into personal details, but into shared exhaustion, into the strange weight of responsibility that never slept. Ethan mentioned his daughter in passing, how everything he did was for her, how sometimes he wondered how long he could keep going. It was then, half laughing at himself, that he made the joke. He said that if life ever got too heavy, she could always move into his tiny apartment, because at least there would be noise, warmth, and someone who needed breakfast every morning. He meant it as a ridiculous contrast to her world of penthouses and private drivers. The words hung in the air for a moment, and then the night ended. Ethan went home, ashamed of his tired humor, convinced he had crossed some invisible line, and certain he would regret it. Morning came too fast. Lily's fever had broken, but bills waited on the kitchen table like silent threats. Ethan packed her lunch, walked her to school, and returned home, mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Then there was a knock at the door. Not the casual knock of a neighbor, but something deliberate, firm. When Ethan opened it, his breath caught. Claire Whitmore stood there, dressed simply, no assistants, no security, holding a small overnight bag. Her eyes looked different in the daylight, less steel, more human, without drama. She explained that she had nowhere she wanted to be that morning, and she remembered his joke. Ethan's apartment was painfully modest, peeling paint, mismatched furniture, toys tucked into corners. He felt exposed, like his entire life was on display. Yet Claire stepped inside slowly, taking it all in, not with judgment, but with curiosity and something close to relief. Lily, home from school that day, peeked from behind Ethan's leg, and Claire knelt to her level, introducing herself not as a CEO, but simply as Claire. Something shifted in that small living room, something fragile and powerful at once. What was meant to be one morning became a day, then another. Claire explained without details that her world had become suffocating, endless expectations, a recent betrayal by someone she trusted deeply, and the crushing isolation of being strong for everyone else had finally broken her. In Ethan's apartment, there were no shareholders, no press, no masks. There were cartoons on the television, simple meals, and a little girl who laughed freely. For the first time in years, Claire slept without setting an alarm. As days passed, Ethan struggled with fear. He worried about rumors, about losing his job, about being misunderstood. He worried that this fragile peace would shatter. Yet Claire did not treat his life like a temporary escape. She listened. How he stretched groceries, how he skipped meals, how he hid stress behind patience. She saw the man he was when no one was watching, and it moved her more than any polished resume ever could. Slowly, things began to change. Not magically, not overnight, but deliberately. Claire learned Lily's routines, helped with homework, and sat at the tiny kitchen table, working on her laptop beside Ethan as he sorted bills. She asked questions about his dreams, the ones he had buried after loss and responsibility took over.
Ethan admitted that he once wanted to open a small repair business.
Something flexible enough to be present for his daughter. Claire did not promise anything. She simply remembered. The outside world eventually noticed Claire's absence, and when she returned to her role, she did so differently. Ethan expected distance, a polite goodbye, a return to normal. Instead, opportunities appeared. His schedule changed, his pay improved, and a quiet investment was made into a small business venture under his name. Claire never framed it as charity. She framed it as belief. She told him, indirectly, that the world needed more men like him, steady and kind, and fewer who confused power with worth. Months later, Ethan stood in his own workshop, Lily painting a sign nearby, laughter filling the space. Claire visited often, not as a savior, but as someone who had found family where she least expected it. The joke that had slipped out on a night of exhaustion had opened a door neither of them knew they were searching for. If this story is touching something inside you, please pause for a moment near the end here. Like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe if you want more stories that remind us humanity still matters. And before the final moments, we have a special request for you. Please comment below and tell us what this story made you feel, because your words might be exactly what someone else scrolling tonight needs to read. In the end, Ethan learned that kindness spoken without expectation can echo louder than fear, and Claire learned that success means nothing if there is no one to share quiet mornings with. Sometimes the smallest jokes carry the biggest truths, and sometimes the door you open without thinking leads you home.